Good morning. Welcome to the importance of including music in your homeschool. I am Justina of Just Classical, and I'm so excited about this training. I'm going to be sharing slides today with you, so I'm just going to go ahead and start the slides. Hi there, and welcome to this very special online training, the importance of including music in your homeschool. Whenever you're watching an online training like this, it's easy to get distracted. So I want to encourage you to really give yourself the time to soak in this training. So if you can, silence your cell phone, turn off your alerts, and get everyone situated a little bit so that this can be your time. So it's going to probably take about an hour to go through this material. I have so much great stuff to share with you. And if you have questions, you can ask them in the chat or the Q&A. I'm not sure there is a Q&A on this, so I'm going to just say put your questions in the chat. I can't see them while these slides are going, but I can answer them at the end for you. So let's get started with the importance of including music in your homeschool. Now, in case you don't know me, my name is Justina of Just Classical, and I'm the founder of Just Classical, and I've been teaching music for over 20 years. I'm the mom of 3 blessings whom I've taught music since they were in the womb, and I mean that literally because I taught early childhood music classes when I was pregnant with them. So I am a lifelong musician with a degree in music therapy, in which I worked for a few years before starting my own business of teaching early childhood music classes, which I also taught for 20 years. Now, more recently, I have written an online music appreciation course called The Composer Detective, and this gives families a way to study the orchestra and 9 great and influential composers. So now that you know a little bit about me, I'm going to ask you some questions to see if this sounds like you. So you're planning your next homeschool year and trying to decide on your curriculum, especially electives for the next year. Does this sound like you? You want your child to have a music education, but you lack the knowledge of where to get started and what and how to teach. Or does this sound like you? You want your children to have a well-rounded education, but you don't feel confident in teaching all subjects. Does this sound like you? You've considered adding music or art, but you're not sure how to fit everything in with so many core subjects. And does this sound like you? You just don't have the time for another curriculum that requires 2 to 3 hours of prep for every hour of lessons, especially for subject areas you do not feel confident teaching. Well, if any or all of these sound familiar, I want you to know that you're in exactly the right place, and today's training is going to give you clarity on how music enhances every area of development and education, as well as give you a starting place for teaching music to your own children, so that you will know where to start and have confidence in teaching them. But before we dive in, I just want to give you a quick preview of what's ahead so you can know what to expect from today's masterclass. I'm going to share how music development perfectly correlates with normal childhood development in the areas of listening, motor, language, social, emotional, and cognitive development. We're also going to talk about how music boosts the brain in academic areas like the core areas of reading, writing, and arithmetic, reasoning, and memorization. And we're going to talk about how music helps the brain in non-academic areas like listening, motor skills, emotional growth, creativity, and enjoyment of life. We're also going to talk about why music education and appreciation are essentials, not just electives, for your child's education. Plus, I'm going to share at the end some more information about my music appreciation course, The Composer Detective, and why it might be just the thing you need right now. So let me ask an important question, one I want you to really think about as we go through this presentation. Why would you want to add music and fine arts to your child's education? This is a question I've asked myself and heard from others many times. After all, we have so many subjects we feel like we need to cover in our children's educations. And as homeschool parents, we already feel overwhelmed with wondering, what should my first grader know? Or my third grader? Or my sixth grader? Or my ninth grader? Can I even homeschool high school? Now, I will admit that it is easy to put a high priority. I'm not sure why it's on the slide. There we go. That's what I wanted you to see. I will admit that it is easy to put a high priority on academics and learning the reading, writing, and arithmetic and STEM, right? Science, technology, engineering, and math. I mean, shouldn't we just focus on these things? So when searching for curriculum, it's easy to get in the mindset of finding the essentials and then only considering music and art as electives. Well, as I mentioned in the introduction, I have a degree in music therapy, and I had the opportunity to study how music affects the brain. I worked with clients in music therapy for a few years, and then I heard about an early childhood music program, which I could teach in my own studio from home. I was delighted to find that this program used music activities that were similar to what I had been using in music therapy and which enhanced brain development in young children. So I taught young children for several years before I got married and had my own children. And then I was able to take my own children through the music classes. I was able to see firsthand and on an intimate level how music helped my own children in every stage of development and enhanced brain development. So those are two of my kids when I was teaching music classes with them. And now these are my kids. They're teenagers, and I have three, yeah. And they are pursuing a well-rounded education. They play piano, they are athletes, they love history, and they love to visit historical sites, as well as to learn new things. They are avid readers, and my son excels in math. So I can see how their early music education has helped them to grow in all these areas. And they like chickens, right? But this story is not about me, and it's not about my children. Your story may look and sound a little different than mine. Perhaps you don't have a music background, or you haven't started music with your children yet. Perhaps you have questions about the value of music in your homeschool. So that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Let's go back to my key question though. Why would you want to add music and fine arts to your child's education? Well, listen to this quote from Paul Harvey. If you're not familiar with Paul Harvey, he was known for his program called The Rest of the Story. And he says this. It's kind of a long quote, so I have it all on the slide for you to follow along, but it's really a powerful quote. Music is everywhere, in birdsong and in bubbling brooks and in laughter, even in the stars. Music is the universal language that transcends time and space. Music is one of the 7 forms of human intelligence, all equal in stature and potential. And yet, education, as is almost totally geared to nurturing linguistic and logical mathematical abilities alone, leaving the other 5 forms, including music, neglected. Our schools tend to refine intellects, but neglect to discipline emotions, and undisciplined emotions keep getting us into trouble. The ugliest headlines are about somebody who may have been smart as all get out, smart enough to be a bank executive or politician or a scientist. But if emotionally colorblind, he's an unguided missile inevitably destined to self-destruct. Without the arts, including music, we risk graduating young people who are right brain damaged. For anyone to grow up complete, music education is imperative. Case histories on file with the National Commission on Music Education uncover exciting correlation between the study of music and such critical workplace performance factors as self-esteem, self-discipline, the ability to work in groups, and higher cognitive and analytical skills. Music in schools, what little there is considered ancillary to real education, as something of a curricular icing. If it is to be reestablished as basic to education, as fundamental to being an educated person, then educators and performers composers and publishers, and those in music-related industries must close ranks to restore educational balance in schools. How does one plausibly argue for spending school money on music when we are graduating illiterates? Should we not be putting all our emphasis on reading, writing, and math? The Back to Basics curricula, while it has merit, ignores the most important void, or the most urgent void in our present system: absence of self-discipline. The arts, inspiring, indeed requiring, self-discipline, may be more basic to our nation's survival than traditional credit courses. Presently, we are spending 29 times more on science than on the arts, and the result so far is worldwide intellectual embarrassment. All right, so this quote is probably pretty old as far as because Paul Harvey has not been alive for a while, but still, we spend a lot of money on science, right? Not the arts. And so I still think it's applicable. He brought out a lot of things here about what music brings. And particularly on this slide, we see self-discipline. He says some beautiful truths about music and its importance in education. So I'm going to repeat this section. For anyone to grow up complete, music education is imperative. Case histories on file with the National Commission on Music Education uncover exciting correlation between the study of music and such critical workplace performance factors as self-esteem, self-discipline, the ability to work in groups, and higher cognitive and analytical skills. So some of this is going to come out more later in this presentation, just some studies that I'll share with you. So let's go back to our question. Why would you want to add music and fine arts to your child's education? Well, I have another quote from David Kearns, who is the retired chairman and chief executive officer of Xerox. Okay, he's not a musician, but he asks a really good question. Why arts in education? Why education at all? The purpose of education is not simply to inform, but to enrich and enlighten, to provide insights into life as it has been led and as it may be led. No element of the curriculum is better suited to that task than arts education. And why? Why is no element of the curriculum better suited to enrich and enlighten our children's lives than arts education? Because music boosts your child's brain in all areas of academics, and it even transcends academics to emotional, creative, and even character-building growth and enjoyment of life. Okay, so some of us are really concerned about academics, so I'm going to share about that area in a little while. But let's talk about real life. Music is going to transcend the academics to a better life as adults, right? Our emotional stability, our creativity, and music helps our children build their characters through persistence and other areas, and it helps us enjoy life. We just want to enjoy life, don't we? So music is not just entertainment. It is not just an elective. It is actually essential in education. Well, why is this? Let's start at the beginning. Well, because music development correlates with every aspect of child development. So we're going to go back and we're going to look at child development and how music and child development correlate. Okay, let's make sure that's the right. No, that's right. Okay, so we're going to start with a couple facts about child development. So first of all, the first sensory organ to function in the womb is the ear. The heart of a child in the womb starts beating at about 21 days after conception. And at 40 days after conception, the brain waves are measurable. Now, at 2 months in the womb, all body systems are functioning. And at 12 weeks or 3 months is when a baby starts hearing. Studies show that a baby can remember what he or she has heard as early as 20 weeks. And there's studies given, they're more like examples, but the fetal heartbeat changes significantly to different types of music. So before and after birth, babies are really bothered by strong beat and loud music, but they love soft music and are especially thrilled by music by Vivaldi. That's Antonio Vivaldi, the Italian composer who's known for the Four Seasons, and it's just very nice music. So apparently babies' heartbeats are settling down when they hear Vivaldi. Another example is of a professional pianist whose baby began to thrash about violently in the womb whenever she played Frédéric Chopin's music. But so she had to stop playing those compositions, but the baby seemed to love when she played Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart's music, which is structured and predictable and softer perhaps than Chopin. Another mother, when she went to a rock concert, had her ribs broken because the baby was kicking so hard in her womb. Because the music's loud, right? So babies can hear in the womb. Now, the ear serves two purposes. The ear serves to help us to hear and listen, and it also provides balance, which is called the vestibular functioning. So the listening is the cornerstone of development. The ear is extremely important. Now I'm going to show two charts. Okay, here's a chart of child development and the order the children develop. And then here is a chart of musical development. And now I'll put them together and we're going to talk through these different areas of development. So you can see there's correlating elements here. And this is why music and incorporating music into a child's life is going to enhance normal development. So let's start with listening. It is the cornerstone of development, right? It is the cornerstone of both child development and musical development. Now, we often ignore how important it is to listen because we live in a highly visual world where children and adults spend hours engaging our eyes on televisions, computers, video games, and electronic devices. But listening is essential. As I said, a baby first orders its world through sound since the baby's unable to see in the womb and since the baby's sight is unfocused at birth. And I'll just remind you, the baby's able to hear and distinguish his or her mother's voice in the womb starting at 12 weeks in the womb. And then they can remember what they heard at 20 weeks. Now, in order to communicate and develop language skills, one must learn to listen. Also, it's important to discriminate between meaningful sound and noise. So that's what we need to do when we're learning to listen, is discriminate between what is meaningful and what is noise. Also, listening heightens the development of attention span, concentration, impulse control, and social skills. And when I talk about social skills, we're talking about learning to listen to others. So again, listening, and of course, the communication. And listening helps children develop sensitivity and compassion towards others. Now, music enhances this foundational principle of listening because music is sound. And when we're learning music, we're learning to discriminate between meaningful noise or meaningful sounds and noise, right? Because we're learning to discriminate pitch, rhythm, voice timbre, and music can be enjoyed at all ages and skill levels through listening. So when involved in music, the ear is being engaged and trained to listen. The neural pathways in the brain are firing, and the proper foundation is laid for further development. So let's look at the second stage of development and how music correlates. So as the ear is the control center for the two functions of listening and the vestibular apparatus, which controls balance, it should be no surprise that motor skills are the second stage of development. There is an intimate psychophysical involvement between sound, hearing, and listening, the ear's cochlear function, and movement in terms of balance, position, and posture, the ear's vestibular function. Now, we know that children by nature move constantly, so movement activities are going to meet them where they're at. Physical movement helps children develop an internal sense of beat that seems to correlate with reading and math abilities. This comes from Jane Healy in her book, Endangered Minds. So You understand that? It's not merely hearing, but it's feeling the beat. And when children develop an internal sense of beat, it's going to help them with further education, especially reading and math abilities. Now, that means that we should be doing steady beat activities with our children when they're young. And you can continue to do that when they're older. And they can move and clap and play different instruments to a steady beat, and it's still fun, right? We like to clap along. So that's one of the steady beat activities. But steady beat activities are important. And this is why, because they provide a sense of security. Because in the womb, the children are used to hearing the sound of the mother's heartbeat and breathing. So when you have a newborn and you're bouncing them to a steady beat or saying shh, shh, shh to kind of calm them down, that is that sense of security from the womb. Also, steady beat activities order a child's world. They also provide structure, and they develop the oral motor connection. Steady beat activities are also the basis for developing rhythm, which is important in performing music, right? And as Jane Healy said, steady beat correlates with reading and math abilities. Now, music is obviously a motivating factor in motor development, for the natural response to music is to move to it. When young children hear a song with a strong beat, I often see them do this little dance of bouncing up and down. They are learning to develop that internal sense of beat. And music provides structure for movement because the beat serves as an endpoint for the movement and a rhythmic cue. It's an outside source of pacing, and so it provides that auditory feedback. Okay, so the video is always hard to get out of. Let's see if I can. All right, might have to escape and make this small. Sorry, this one always gives me a little technical difficulty, so we'll try and go back. There we go. Okay, so music and movement activities also provide kinesthetic learning opportunities, which means that children are experiencing the body move, building muscular movement memory, focusing on feeling aspects of creative expression. And the music and movement activities and kinesthetic learning aid in recall and in understanding of language and events. And they stimulate participation. So further, movement activities are the foundation for cognitive learning, and they aid in the development of purposeful movement, impulse control, gross and fine motor coordination, eye-hand coordination, spatial concepts, and problem solving. So next, we have in our child development and musical development is language. Language skills come next in the sequence of development, and children begin with nonverbal communication. Then they say one word at a time, like ball, and then they connect nouns and verbs into short sentences. As they hear language spoken by adults and experiment actively with language themselves, then they begin to speak in more complex sentences, modeling what they hear from the important people in their lives. So language, of course, is important for communication and for higher level reasoning. Now, just as language has patterns of letters, words, phrases, and sentences, so does music. Music also imitates conversations. For example, phrases in music include questions and answers, silence, listening, and response. So as a child is exposed to the structure of music, language and communication patterns are reinforced. And for example, let's see, did I go there? No. For example, a child will not stutter when singing because of the structure of the music puts the words into a predictable music. I'm sorry, let me try that again. A child will not stutter when singing because of the structure of the music, and it puts the words into a predictable time format. Now, this is a note to say that TV is not a good model for a child's language development because in most programming, the language is much too quick for the children to understand, and language is dumbed down so that complex sentences are not heard, nor a wide variety of vocabulary words. So next in development, children develop social skills. They must learn to interact with other people, both children and adults, in an acceptable way. So they learn impulse control, like not hitting the kid who has the toy that one wants. And they have to learn how to take turns. They learn to use their words to work out conflicts. And they have to learn how to be sensitive and compassionate towards others' needs as well as their own. Now, how does music correlate to social skills? Well, there is an amazing aspect of music, in my opinion, that is an ensemble. An ensemble is a group of people doing something together to make music. And other activities might promote social development, such as team sports. But these are aggressive interactions, which certainly have their place. However, music is an opportunity for people to work together to create something beautiful, whether it is unison singing or diverse parts that form exquisite harmonies. Music is also an opportunity to learn positive social interaction through listening and expression or expressing. Now, ensemble activities are also important because they develop creative expression, require impulse control, and concentration as one focuses on one's part. They enhance communication and understanding of parts and phrases in music. Okay, let's move on to the next part of child development. It is emotional or creative expression. Now, children become more aware of their emotions and how to control them. Outlets may be sought to express emotions in a healthy way. As I said, aggressive behaviors may be appropriate in competitive sports. But music is an outlet for expressing ourselves. It can be a very important outlet. As Hans Christian Andersen said, "Where words fail, music speaks." That is why there is a field called music therapy, and why many of us turn to listening to a favorite song for comfort, or to praise God, or for motivation, or we play an instrument for an emotional outlet or a creative outlet. So by exposing a child to music, he or she may find a wonderful outlet for emotions and creative expression. So this is enhancing the child development in this area. So the pinnacle of development is cognitive reasoning. Children are reading, then writing, and ultimately thinking for themselves. We want them to be able to become responsible adults who contribute to society and forge new technology and relationships for our progress as a civilization. And this cognitive level of development begins in the teen years. So in music, reading and writing are the means of expression. As one can read music, one can participate in higher levels of music making, understanding not only the notes on a page, but the genre of the piece, the nuances of expression. And one can analyze the structure of the music and which notes make up the chords. And ultimately, one will be able to write new music as well. All right, let's return to our key question. Why would you want to add music and fine arts to your child's education? Well, as I said, it enhances every stage of development, right? So now we see that progression and all the activities of music that enhance every stage of development. Also, music is interactive. Now, I already mentioned that we live in an overly visually stimulating society. So while TV and computer software producers purport to offer educational programming, it is actually passive learning. Listening to music can also be passive, mind you, which is why I've told you about different activities that you can participate in it more actively. But I just want to stress the importance of interactive learning rather than passive, and music offers many opportunities for interactive learning. So in her book, Endangered Minds, Jane Healey proposes that while there is, of course, a genetic element to intelligence, environments can shape brains and intelligence levels. So studies were done with rats in which some were given an enriched environment with playmates and toys such as wheels and balls where they could explore, push, roll, climb, etc. Okay, so these are the active rats. Then there were other rats who were in impoverished conditions of merely living in a cage. Now, those rats who were in the enriched interactive environment developed larger brain cortexes by as much as 11%. Now, there's actually a third group of rats, and they were given the opportunity to watch the other rats in the enriched environment who were playing and had toys. And these rats in this third group, their brains did not grow any more than those of the rats in the impoverished cage. So the point here, as the author Jane Healey states, is that children need stimulation and intellectual challenges, but they must be actively involved in their learning, not responding passively while another brain, their teachers or parents, laboriously develops new synapses in their behalf. And it's not just our brains, it's letting their brains just sit there passively, whether the teacher's actually doing the work or they're just watching a program or doing a computer game. She wrote this book before there was so many computer games, and before there were iPhones, and the kids are sitting on the iPhones since they were born playing games. So this is just a good reminder that our children need stimulation and intellectual challenges that are active. So there are actually critical periods of learning too. The moment a child is born, the neural pathways are developing, and there are critical periods for some types of mental development. So if the right stimulation isn't there at the time, a child will not develop in that area normally. Now, language is one of those areas. I think we've all observed this. There's a critical period before the age of 2 where a child's ear can hear nuances in any language to be able to imitate those sounds later in speech. So if a child is in a bilingual or multi-language home, he or she can learn to speak those languages without accents because he or she heard the nuances of those sounds during that critical period. Most of us Americans, if you're in America, heard only English as infants, and so when we learn another language, we struggle with the correct pronunciation or the correct accent to speak that language like a native speaker. Well, music also has a critical period of learning. This window of opportunity is until age 9. Children who are exposed to music at an early age easily develop a sense of steady beat and accurate pitch, regardless of if their parents exhibit those musical skills. Musical ability is not all genetic. Yes, there is a genetic element to it, but it can be developed during early childhood. So music educator Edwin Gordon suggests that you cannot influence a child's aptitude for music after age 9, but can only influence achievement after this age. So you can't influence their aptitude, but they can still learn. You can influence their achievement and their ability to go higher. I would say that it's not impossible to learn music, though, or develop the ability to match pitch and keep a steady beat after age 9. It's not impossible, but it's a lot harder. So music development correlates with every stage of your child's development and will enhance every area. And so why else is music important in your child's life? Well, another reason is that music promotes family interaction. We live in an age of electronic devices and visual distractions, right? I've already talked about that. And while this may not be true for as many homeschool families, in a lot of families, both parents work, and families may spend less time together. So whatever your family or work situation is, music can be an enjoyable activity for the whole family to participate in. No matter what your skill level or your age, every member of the family can participate in music in some way, listening, moving, playing an instrument, or keeping a beat. And you don't have to have a microphone. You don't have to do karaoke. It could just simply be any song you turn on the radio, get up and dance together as a family, or sing along. By spending a few minutes each day singing to and with your children, especially when they are young, you develop a bond with them as you share an experience together. And this can be repeated day after day, and you will build family memories together too. So rather than each family member doing their own thing, each on a device or all watching television, music is an activity that brings everyone together. It is a cultural tradition we need to continue to pass down to our children in our overwired world. You know, there was a time when people would get together and just have sing-alongs of popular music or hymns. All right, so we can have family interaction through music. That's why it is also important. Now, if we understand that music correlates with and enhances every stage of brain development, wouldn't you want to make this a core subject in your homeschool? Well, let's look at it from another angle. Music boosts academic and cognitive abilities. Now, some of us as homeschool parents are concerned about the academic side of our children's education. And that is a good thing to be concerned about. It may not be the only thing to be concerned about, but this is how music boosts academic and cognitive abilities. First of all, music boosts language processing, such as reading and writing and comprehension. Now, I already talked about this, how music imitates the patterns of language and conversation and communication. So as a child is exposed to the structure of music, language and communication patterns are reinforced. Secondly, music boosts math skills. Did you know that reading music includes learning quarter, half, and whole notes, which are essentially fractions? So when a student is learning rhythm, he or she is also learning to count, and not just counting numbers, but the music student is using logic to count out the rhythms and bars as he or she progresses through the piece. Music requires the student to perform mathematical processes like division on the fly. There are many musical concepts which have mathematical counterparts. Okay, sorry, one second. My computer needs to be plugged in. Okay, so of course, research also shows a link between music education and success in school math. A study in Canada by the Royal Conservatory of Music found that students in the arts program scored significantly higher on mathematical tests of computation and estimation than did students in a control group. Third, music helps with analysis, critical thinking, and reasoning. In learning to read music, I already talked about this as well, one can participate in higher levels of music making, understanding not only the notes on a page, but the genre of the piece, the nuances of expression, analyzing the structure of the music, which notes make up chords, for example. Students who have early musical training will develop the areas of the brain related to language and reasoning. The left side of the brain is better developed with music, and songs can help imprint information on young minds. That's why I love using music to help memorize things. Next, music is a powerful tool for memorization. See, I gave you a preview. Now, of course, the best way to memorize something is using a song or a rhythm. Think of the ABC song. We start our children in memorizing the most basic facts of language with a song. And my children have memorized the full Westminster Shorter Catechism of Faith, which is 107 questions, to songs that I wrote. And that's a lot of information, 107 questions. But music made it easy and enjoyable to memorize. Now, memorizing music pieces for performance also correlates with verbal memory skills. That is, memorizing music improves non-musical memory too. So a study from the Chinese University of Hong Kong shows children who had begun or continued music instruction exhibited significant verbal memory improvement after a year. And another study shows that children with musical training demonstrated greater improvement on memory tests throughout the course of a year than children without musical training. So the co-author of this study said, music requires the brain to solve the problems of how to allocate attention and memory toward complex tasks. So music boosts the brain's ability to memorize. Also, music contributes to general academic success and increased test scores. Now, with all the benefits that music brings to kids' language, math, memory, and self-assessment, there is no surprise that there is a strong relationship between music and general academic success. Studies have shown that students with music training scored higher in English and math than students who had no music at all. And according to the College Board, high school students in music programs scored higher than their non-musical peers on the SAT. In fact, a survey in 1994, I know that seems like a long time ago now, but at the time, shows that those who were music majors in college had the highest acceptance rate to medical school. Also, a University of Kansas study found that students in elementary schools with high quality music education programs scored around 22% higher in English and 20% higher in math scores on standardized tests. So also, music impacts long-term success. So these are measures of long-term success, such as educational attainment, like how far did they go in their education, and what is their income. So a 2007 poll by Harris Interactive found that nearly 9 out of 10 people with postgraduate education had participated in music while in school, and 83% of those with incomes of $150,000 or more had had music education. So the College Board's 2006 study also found that high school students who participated in band or orchestra reported the lowest lifetime and current use of drugs and alcohol. Now that's students who participated in band and orchestra. Don't ask me about rock bands, right? That seems like there's a little more alcohol and drug use if you're in a rock band, but students who participated in band and orchestra in high school reported the lowest lifetime and current use of drugs and alcohol. So overall, participation in music grows the brain and keeps it active as it develops more neural pathways. So Dr. Eric Rasmussen, the chair of the Early Childhood Music Department at the Peabody Preparatory of the Johns Hopkins University, quite the title there, says there's some good neuroscience research that children involved in music have larger growth of neural activity than people not in music training. When you're a musician and you're playing an instrument, you have to be using more of your brain. Okay, so those are the academic areas. Now, let's talk about non-academic areas. Because equally or more importantly, music affects the brain in non-academic areas as well, and that helps us and our children to become better people. So Annie Patel, an associate professor of psychology at Tufts University and the author of a book called Music, Language, and the Brain, says, if we know how and why music changes the brain in ways that affect other cognitive abilities, this could have a real impact on the value we put on it as an activity in the schools. Not to mention all the impact it has on emotional development, emotional maturity, social skills, stick-to-itiveness, things we typically don't measure in school, but which are hugely important in a child's ultimate success. So what are these other areas which music is also developing in the brain? Well, we talked about several of these already in early childhood development, right? Listening, motor skills and movement, social skills, emotional expression, and creative expression. I'm going to spend another minute on creative expression though. Music fosters kids' creativity, which can have an impact on their futures. In fact, the Arts Partnership states employers identify creativity as one of the top 5 skills important for success in the workforce. They also say that originality and flexibility are benefits of music education because music involves creativity and innovation. And graduates from music programs testify that creativity, teamwork, communication, and critical thinking skills are required in their work, no matter whether they're working in music or in other professions. So that's why STEM is now STEAM. So STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And shortly after that came out, people said, wait a minute, we need the arts in there because we need the processes of creativity and innovation. So even in all that science-based stuff, you need that creative side. A couple more things that music develops in the brain are an active learning environment, which I talked about with the example of the rat study, and then enjoyment of beauty and life. You see, humans also seek beauty, and music helps us to do this. When we sing or listen to music, we're also enjoying beauty and ministering to our own souls, which can lift us into a whole new world. So this then is the purpose of a course in music appreciation. Not to teach us facts about composers, but to help us to love their works, to make Beethoven's symphonies as essential to us as are the plays of Shakespeare. In short, to give us a new sense organ for the perception of beauty. Ideally, we want our children to experience success throughout life itself, right? So the benefits may be psychological, spiritual, and physical, with the challenge of making life meaningful and fulfilled. And to reach a higher state of development by participating in music, we develop self-expression, which in turn leads to self-esteem, and ultimately helps us to succeed at these challenges. So another quote from the US Secretary of Education, Richard Riley. He's not the current Secretary of Education, but he says this: Casals says music fills him with the wonder of life and the incredible marvel of being human. Now, Casals is Pablo Casals, the famous cellist. He played the cello, that is. And so he said that music fills him with the wonder of life. Now, Charles Ives is the next one he's talking about. He was an American composer. He says that music expands his mind and challenges him to be a true individual. Bernstein is Leonard Bernstein, the American composer and conductor. Bernstein says music is enriching and ennobling. To me, that sounds like a good cause for making music an integral part of every child's education. Studying music and the arts elevates children's education, expands students' horizons, and teaches them to appreciate the wonder of life. The wonder of life. Let's keep the wonder of life, right? Music is going to help us with that. So we can see from all of this information, music is a powerful tool and, as seen, can dramatically improve and enrich everybody. It makes sense to push music education and to allow young generations to gain these wonderful benefits: higher intelligence through increased creative thinking, problem solving, and physically stronger brains, a higher perception of life, including better attitudes, strong desires to achieve and fulfill, and higher self-esteem, better developed discipline, study skills, concentration, communication, and team skills, which transfer from education through to career, and a better understanding of communities and society. So, music is essential. So, where does this leave us? What should you do with all of this information? Well, involve your child in music, of course. Music is a more potent instrument than any other for education, and children should be taught music before anything else. So we've heard this kind of quote several times. It might be their opinions, but it's also backed up by facts, right? Now, Plato was a long time, he's an ancient philosopher, right? So that's a very old quote. And even then he saw the power of it without all the studies. I've given you a lot of studies to consider. Well, how can you add music education to your homeschool easily and enjoy all these brain boosting benefits? Well, we're homeschool moms and we like to research. So you can go to the library for books and search for YouTube videos of recordings and do all the work on your own. And that is a great way to do it if you want to. But if you remember at the beginning, I said, does this sound like you? You don't want to spend 2 or 3 hours for every subject preparing it on your own, right? So if you love to do that, then that is great. And I recommend that you can do that. But if you don't have a music background, you're not actually going to be able to teach your child an instrument. And that's okay. You can still do the music appreciation portion on your own, right? So another option is to enroll in in-person classes or private lessons. And I totally recommend this if it is at all possible for you. In-person is really the best way to learn. But we do live in a world that has been crazy the last several years. And so there's another option that some of us have had to take advantage of if in-person wasn't available, and that is to enroll in online music classes, like a music appreciation class. And you could do both. You can do private lessons and an online class to enhance what your child is learning. And this actually is a great alternative as well until you can afford lessons, if you can't afford them right now. So I'm going to invite you to join me in the Composer Detective. It's a music appreciation course for families. It is an easy to use, all-in-one online course, and it's designed to help you lead your children in investigating instruments from the orchestra and music and composers so that your children fall in love with listening to music and they receive all the benefits of boosting their brains in every area of education. Now, the Composer Detective will give you the tools you need to confidently lead your children in learning about the orchestra without hours of planning so that you feel like a rock star, right? Well, how do we do that? So you can see there's some videos, there's some worksheets, I'm going to tell you all these things. So how do we do that? There's actually 4 steps that I take you through in the Composer Detective. And first of all, we investigate the instruments of the orchestra because musical instruments are fun and interesting, so kids will get hooked on learning about the instruments and the music they make. Number 2, we're going to investigate the history of the orchestra. With an understanding of 4 basic areas of orchestral music, not areas, eras, the characteristic sounds and forms of each era become familiar, and children will grow to enjoy all kinds of music. So orchestral music has 4 distinct eras, and you don't have to like all classical music, but just being exposed to it will help you to appreciate the different eras and the different sounds from those eras. That's what I'm saying there. So third, we investigate the composers of each era. So when children get to know the personalities of the composers and learn history, geography, and culture right along with music, the composers and their music will come alive to them. And fourth, we investigate the music of the composers. Listening to the music of the composers, beginning with short pieces, because children need to start with short pieces if they're just being exposed to music. They don't have long attention spans, so we start with short pieces by the composers. Children will become accustomed to the sounds of the instruments and style of the era and grow to appreciate music from a variety of composers. Now, if this sounds boring, maybe a little dry, be rest assured that I want you and your children to have fun with classical music. And that's why my course is called The Composer Detective. So you and your children get into the spirit of investigating composers and their music. You see, I want history and music to come alive, so I dress up as George Friedrich Handel, the German Baroque composer who wrote Messiah, from which you might recognize the song, Hallelujah, Hallelujah. Okay, so George Friedrich Handel is the host of the Composer Detective, and he guides you and your children in fun videos about the orchestra and in biographies where Handel interviews 9 great and influential composers. And yes, I dress up as each composer to bring them to life, and they even interact a little with each other. So the Composer Detective starts with a unit on investigating the orchestra, where you and your child learn about the instruments and the eras of the orchestra. So for example, your child will learn about the 4 families of instruments in the orchestra: the strings, the woodwinds, the brass, and the percussion. And they'll be introduced to these instruments and videos and fun pieces as I bring out the sounds of each instrument. And some of the pieces that were written just for kids are covered in this unit, such as A Young Person's Guide to the Orchestra, Peter and the Wolf, and Carnival of the Animals. So then your child will also learn about the eras of the orchestra. So there's 4 eras: the Baroque era, the Classical era, the Romantic era, and the Modern era. And with an understanding of these 4 basic eras of orchestral music, the children will grow to understand and enjoy all kinds of music. So then there are 9 composer units, and these are the 9 composers that we cover. So in the Baroque era is George Friedrich Handel, who's, as I said, the host, the guide for the entire course. And then you also have Johann Sebastian Bach. For the classical era, you have Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and Ludwig van Beethoven. And then the Romantic era actually has 3 composers: Johannes Brahms, Antonin Dvorak, and Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky. And the modern era composers are Claude Debussy and Igor Stravinsky. And if this all sounds foreign to you, don't worry. Handel will help you become friends with all of them. Now let's take a look at what each unit comes with. So I'm just actually going to kind of go through these. They're very similar mock-ups, but you can see each unit is going to come with videos. And there's particular videos like Investigating the Orchestra, as I said, is going to come with the videos Investigate the Instruments of the Orchestra and Investigate the Eras of the Orchestra. I already showed you those video covers. And there's another song called the Orchestra Song, which your child can learn and sing along with it. And then there are always teacher notes and student activity packs. So you can see some of the worksheets from each of those. So each unit, again, comes with the same kind of things, but in the composer units, each there's a little different than the Investigating the Orchestra, because in each composer unit, you're going to have a biography video. Again, that's where I dress up as the composer, and he tells his story from first person. And then there's also a whole section of playlists in each composer unit so that you get familiar with their music. And so it's a playlist from YouTube, and it's some of the most important works of these composers. And the playlist also helps you. So like I talked about, it's really important to listen. So if at all possible, you and your child would just listen to it, but there's YouTube videos there too, so you can watch the orchestra perform. It's really great to be exposed to great orchestras, famous conductors, and famous soloists. And some of these people aren't alive anymore, and yet there's some videos of them. So that's what's included in these courses. The teacher notes include lesson plans, suggested lesson plans of 2 to 3 days a week for 15 to 20 minutes. Maybe they could go longer if you choose to listen to more. And then, of course, a student activity pack with the worksheets like you're seeing in these slides. And these include things like a page where you can take notes on the video so you retain the information, things like activity sheets with word searches or crosswords, information sheets about the era and the biography of the composer as well, coloring sheets, and listening sheets. As you listen to each of the pieces in the playlist, then you can circle things and write things down about what you're hearing, so they're actively listening. And it helps you to interact with the terms and the facts about the composers, so it makes the learning fun and easy. Okay, so these are all of the different composers and what's included. Now, what's the investment in an online course like this? Well, if you have done your research and you've shopped around, you know that in-person music classes run $30 to $50 a month, depending on where you live. And private lessons run $30 to $50 per half hour. Now, again, I recommend in-person classes and private lessons. They are totally the best way to go. But you also know that music is a super booster of brain power, and maybe you can't afford those. So this is what the investment for the composer detective is. Each unit is $29 if you buy them separately. So the total value is $290. But I sell the composer detective for $197. So just over $19 per unit if you bought the whole thing. And then I actually have it for 25% off through tomorrow, February 28th at 11:59 p.m. So you have today and tomorrow to think about this and make a decision as to whether the Composer Detective is the right fit for your family. So I'm selling it with this discount at basically $147.70, which is just over $14 per unit. And remember, the value is $290 or $297. Now I think I wrote on two different things. But for coming to this webinar, this masterclass with me, if you choose to buy today or tomorrow, I'm also going to throw in 2 extra units that were not part of the original Composer Detective. So you did not see their faces, but I have since created 2 new units. One's called Investigating Antonio Vivaldi, and one's called Investigating Franz Joseph Haydn. So Antonio Vivaldi fits with the Baroque composers. He's in the same era as George Friedrich Handel and Johann Sebastian Bach. And Investigating Franz Joseph Haydn. Haydn was a classical era composer, and he's in there with Mozart and Beethoven. So as a bonus, I will give you these 2 extra units, which means now the value of it is over $319, and you could get it today for $147.70. So if you are interested in this, if you think this is going to help you in your homeschool, oh, also I'm selling the units for 25% off, or the bundles. So units are usually $29, so you can get 1 unit and just try it out for $21.75. And bundles are usually $87, so you could get a bundle of 4 units for $65.25. So that's the 25% off sale through tomorrow night. All right, so where do I get it? So here is the URL, and I can put that in the chat in a minute. I see there's a couple comments or questions, and you do have to use a coupon code. It is TCD, which stands for the Composer Detective Love Music. So you do have to use that, and I will show you the screen. Okay, so you go to the URL I gave you, you'll see a big button. It depends on which option you choose as to what the button says, but just say you want to buy the whole course. This is what the button looks like. You're going to click on that button, and it's going to take you to a page that looks like this. And it's going to give you the option for a coupon code. It's kind of small, so I wanted you to see this page. So the arrow says have a coupon code, and then you have to click on that down arrow. And then you fill it in with that code, TCD Love Music. And you click apply, and it'll give you the discount. All right, so here it is again. Where do I get it? This is the URL, and I will put it in the chat here in a moment. And thanks for hanging out here with me for this last hour, and let's see what kind of questions you guys might have. All right, this is wonderful information. Thank you so much. All right, thanks for being here, Sarah. And let's see this other question. I see you have volumes based on history cycles. Do the activity packs come as one document for easy printing? Well, no, I'm sorry. That could be something I could do in the future. So they are separate. For each unit, it is a separate student activity pack that you print and a separate teacher activity pack. And so I don't have, for the bundles, I think you're talking about the volumes, the bundles. I don't have like all 4 of the things to print together. So I apologize for that. Hopefully that's not a deal breaker for you, but if you, maybe that's something I could look to do in the future. That's a good idea. Probably wouldn't be too hard for me to get it done either. So if you choose to buy, then we can communicate via email and see if I can get that done for you. All right, so the total for all this is 147. Yes, so I think it actually comes out to 147.70. So with that 25% off discount, I'll also type this in. Use code. I'll just give you the code one more time. So if you're on my email list already, then you will see that I have this in the emails as well, where you can easily click on one of the buttons in the email or the links, and it'll take you to the sales page. And I in the email, I'm always giving you the code. So, all right, let's see if you have any more questions. Great information. Thanks so much. I was wondering if you could share what kinds of activities count as early music exposure. I may have blown that one. For the Composer Detective, would doing 1 time a week be sufficient? Okay, so yes, all right. first of all, answer the composer detective question about doing one time a week. It is totally adaptable. So the thing is, when you buy the composer detective, if you should choose to buy it, you will be able to have lifetime access as long as I have the product online. That is, as long as I can keep it online. That's what lifetime access means. And I plan to keep it online. I have it on a platform that I should be able to keep it online for a really long time. And so if I make updates, you automatically get those updates, so it's not like when you buy a book and then the next year they come out with a revised edition and you're like, oh. So if I revise it, you get it. The only thing is in my original composer detective, I didn't have Vivaldi or Haydn. So those are add-ons actually. But if I revise it unit, then you will immediately get that update. And then as far as it's adaptable, because I give you suggested lesson plans for 2 to 3 days a week, but really it's something you can come back to year after year. If you just want to study the orchestra for 2 or 3 months and really go through some of the pieces there, then you have that option. And the lesson plans just say, hey, do this 3 times a week. But you can do one lesson a week, and you can take one of the bundles, and you can I created the bundles with the idea that people in classical conversations, because I used to be in classical conversations, they study the orchestra and 3 composers every year. So those bundles match what they're studying each year. And so those bundles, they could study 4 units all spring long and pull that in. But you can take one unit or one bundle and spread it as long as you want to. You could buy the whole course now and just do 1 unit a year for the next 10 years, or you could do 2 or 3 units a year and then revisit them when your children are older and get more out of it. I highly recommend repetition because kids learn things differently at different ages. And so you can do this year, a couple composers this year, and then in 2 or 3 years do those same composers and they'll experience it differently. So what I'm trying to say is it's adaptable. Yes, you can do it 1 time a week if you want to. You make it fit what you want to. I just
Tina,
lesson plans. Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt there. I am only on my phone. I can't get it on my computer. So if there's any info that you put in on the chat or anything like that, could you text me or send me an email with that info?
Yes.
And I had a question. What is the earliest age that you could use this with?
The earliest age? Okay, so yeah, you could use it even with preschoolers. There is another question about activities with younger kids. So you can totally do it with preschoolers. If you're going to do it with 3 to 5-year-olds, I would recommend investigating the orchestra, because some of the activities there are really good for younger kids, like the Carnival of the Animals, because it talks about animals and the music represents the animals. You can do some movement activities along with that little kids will really like. So what ages are your kids? And what's your name, by the way? So I can contact you.
It's Jan Dye.
All right. Are you on my email list, Jan?
Yes, I am. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'll look for you, but you might want to shoot me a quick email after this call too, just so I can find you. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So what ages are your kids?
I'm actually looking for friends and nieces, things like that. So they are 2 to 3 years old right now.
Okay, 2 and 3-year-olds. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
but having them listen to any of this music, especially the short listening pieces, just exposes them to classical music. And kids have no opinions about music when they're really little. They all listen to anything
Mm-hmm.
that parents listen to. So I have exposed my kids to a wide variety of music. We listened to a ton of classical music when they were young, but we also listened to 70s music because my husband was in high school in the 70s. And we listened to 80s music because I was in high school in the 80s, right? So we um, they will get used to listening to anything. So just even listening to some of the short listening pieces in the units. But again, I recommend investigating the orchestra and things like Carnival of Animals, where they can actually participate actively in the music. Um, so
Thank
it
you.
is geared towards elementary and middle school, but again, I designed it for families to do together if possible. And so there would be multiple ages. And so I've got worksheets for younger kids and worksheets for older kids, meaning kindergarten through third grade is one set of worksheets, and fourth through eighth is the other set of worksheets. And so again, that might be a little older for your 2 and 3-year-old kids you're thinking about, but coloring to the music and just participating in some of the activities I suggest with some of the songs would be helpful. So again, just shoot me an email and I'll get back to you with any of the written information. And I wanted to go back to the question because I answered one. Oh, activities that count as early music exposure. Okay, Amy, if you want to unmute, and how old are your kids? It doesn't mean you blew anything. Okay, never feel like you blew. I was just saying, like, if people have younger kids, then expose them to music even when they're younger. But I realize I'm speaking to a homeschooling audience. And so most of us already have our kids homeschooling and we're like, oh, missed early childhood, I guess. But it doesn't mean you blew it. So how old are your kids, Amy? Or
He's 10.
he's 10. That's not bad.
Yeah.
So when you ask the question, what kind of activities count as early music exposure, are you asking for what you did in the past, or do you just want to know what to do now?
Well, kind of both, because I mean, my music background was choir. So like for the first several years of his life, I sang him to sleep every night.
That's
And
perfect.
then that petered off. And then it was so interesting because he was a terrible sleeper. And I remember reading this article online, desperate to try to find something. And along the lines with what you said, I would do the shushing and I would combine it with this rhythmic tapping that they said to just think of like a clock ticking and rhythmically tap. So I was like, maybe that counted. And I took him to some of the little music classes in our area, but besides for that, I can't really think of what I did that might have counted. And then yes, so now I'd like to be more purposeful at 10 to develop what I can.
Okay, first of all, no regrets, okay? Because we all have things that we think about as parents. I should have done this, I should have done that. Actually, you did exactly a lot of stuff. You did a lot of stuff. So yes, tapping them a steady beat, when they're little babies and you're shushing them and you're singing to them, and toddlers, I bet you still continue to sing for a while. That's what I did with my kids. But I knew tons of songs, right? Because I was teaching early childhood music classes. And the baby classes, we did lots of nursery rhymes and lullabies and finger plays and stuff like that, right? So I did do a lot of stuff, and I sang to my kids constantly. But just singing lullabies is good. And for anybody else who's listening, don't have regrets if you didn't do that either. It's fine. So, but those steady beat activities, you went to some music classes. So that's the kind of music exposure that's fine at that age. And 10 is not too late to start more formal study. So you could look at the composer detective as a slightly more formal study, because now he's going to learn about composers and the instruments of the orchestra more formally. And so I suggest certain activities in the composer detective. Of course, the big thing about music appreciation is listening, but there are ways to engage in those listening. Like some pieces have form, like what we call ternary or rondo. That's the other word I was looking for, rondo form, where there's a section of music that plays and then a different section, and then it comes back to the same section at the beginning. So we'll go A, B, A. And so you can play games with cards to listen. Does this section sound the same as this section? No, they're different. So this section is A and this is B. Okay, listen to the third section. Is it the same as B? No. Is it the same as A? Oh, it is. And so they're actively working and listening in those ways and learning more the formal structure of music. Let's see what other kind of activities. I mean, I do activity sheets where they learn more about the composer, like with a crossword or a word search. And so there's that kind of thing just for them to memorize some facts about the composers. But that's the kind of study where at age 10, he's not going to remember everything at age 10 either. I mean, I did the whole course with my kids. They were exposed to music in other ways, but I did the whole course with my kids when my oldest daughter was probably 13 or 14. My son was probably 12, and then my younger daughter was 9. My 9-year-old didn't get as much out of it as the older kids, but she still got stuff out of it. And so I'd like to repeat it with her where she gets more out of it, but it's just exposing them to it. So I don't know if that helped with the kind of activities.
Yes, that was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, sure. So again, no regrets, right?
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, what is the target grade level for this program? Okay, I think I said that, but maybe you didn't hear me, so I'll answer it again. Basically, I geared it towards elementary and middle school. It would still be great for high school. High schoolers could go through it on their own. I just don't really market it to high schoolers because I dress up as the characters, and by high school, you might be going, that's not really cool. I don't want to watch that. So some high schoolers love it, right? Homeschool families maybe would be a little more receptive to it, but elementary and middle school, and you just heard me say my middle school kids actually got a little more out of it than my elementary, but it's great to expose them to this. Like I said, with the flexibility of it, do it more than once over the lifetime of your school career, homeschooling career, their homeschooling career. Okay. And Tara, did you find the link? Should I enter it again for you? Did you find it? Let's see. Oh, never mind. Okay, I didn't see your last post. All right, never mind. I found it. Okay. Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you for purchasing. I'm so excited.
Sorry, I just have a little question about
Yes.
if what will you start with a kid who really doesn't into music now?
Who's not into music?
Yeah.
How old is your child?
He's 9, and sometimes the younger two girls love the folk song that we're listening to and everything like that, but he always complained that he doesn't like it, or like, I don't know. But before, when he was younger, he really likes music. But
Yeah.
now that he's 9, he's like, folk songs have a really different thing about him. I don't know what or
Yeah, so there is an age where kids are going to say, well, I don't like this kind of music, right? So it's just continue to work with them and expose them to it. And if they find, that's why I start with the short listening pieces of each composer that are hopefully fun songs, because I mean, a kid can say, oh, well, I don't like certain kinds of music, but I don't really know very many kids who don't like any music. I don't think I know any kids who don't like any music. So they might say, I don't like classical music, but honestly, there's a lot of classical music in all the movies that our kids are watching. There's a lot of orchestra background, right? So, and a lot of kids like the music from movies. So it's just, experimenting, and we don't have to make our kids like every kind of music, right? My kids right now are into country music, and I'm really not a country music fan. And so they're always teasing me, well, Mom, you need a music appreciation course in country music. And I'm like, yeah, right. But I like all kinds of music, really. At the right place, I like country music. I just don't want to listen to it all the time. And so that's how it can be with classical music. We're not going to like every classical music piece. We're not going to like every genre. And just exposing them to different pieces over time. But if you can start with the short listening music pieces, and then it's only 3 to 5 minutes of music anyway. But just listening to it one time is usually not going to be enough. He might say, well, I didn't like that piece, but just sneak it in at different times. Like while you're eating lunch, just play the piece again, or say, hey, let's get up and dance to this time, because it has such a nice steady beat, to get him involved in it, and it might become more fun. the kids can develop attitudes at different time and roll their eyes at you and say, Mom, I'm not doing this. This is stupid, right? That comes more with teenage years usually. But I think repetition is what makes music an old friend. So I didn't grow to love pop music on the radio when I was a teenager in the 80s because I heard there's not many songs I would say, oh, I love that the first time I heard it. It's just because I listened to the radio consistently and then it came on so many times. And repetition causes you to enjoy music more. So the more we're exposed to something, the more we grow to appreciate it. So I think that your son could grow to appreciate it. He's probably going to fight you a little bit at first, but if you can think of any way to engage him in it, that's why I have the listening worksheets. And again, if it has a nice steady beat and it's one that you can get up and dance to together with your daughters as well, then that would be hopefully engaging for him too. So does that help?
Yeah, actually, the girls love it. Like the folk song. Actually, he's more, I think, into classical music because that's what he likes to hear sometimes. But for the folk song, sometimes he's like, "Oh, that's lame" or something.
Okay, what folk songs are we talking about?
We had last year this what is everybody likes this the CM thing in the AO. I don't know if you know that the Wellerman song.
No, I don't know that one.
Yeah, it's Australian music songs.
Oh, okay.
Folk song.
And again, if he doesn't like some of the folk songs, move on, right? And expose him to something he does like. So you're saying he actually does like some of the classical songs and but eventually maybe he will like some of those songs. So don't worry if they don't like every piece. I guess I would say that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. All right, so it's very CM, so Charlotte Mason concept to let them glean what they can at each age and repeatedly expose so they can keep gleaning as they grow. As what they glean changes. Yep, good comment. So repetition is how we learn. So, okay, did I answer all the questions in here? There's actually a lot of comments, so I'm just trying to make sure. Any more questions? Okay, well, go get
another question, please.
good.
Start. Regarding this unit, if I purchase one today, and I want to purchase like next month or maybe after 2 months the other units, will I still get the 25% discount or no?
It is just for today, and tomorrow is when the sale ends, but sometimes I have other sales. So if you're on my email list, Irene, are you?
Yeah.
If you're on my email list, then you see that I have different promotions at different times. So there are other opportunities. So yeah, give yourself some time to go through one that you want to go through and then see what you think, and I'll make you an offer again in the future. All right, thanks for being on here, ladies. If there aren't any more questions. So I'm not sure. Hopefully you guys are gonna purchase and email me if you have more questions, okay? I'd love to see you inside of the course, and thanks so much for attending today. All right, bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.